With the NBA playoffs being days away from beginning and the play-in tournament going on, I'll be discussing the biggest weakness that every NBA playoff or play-in team has. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to Hooper's Radar. Just before we get into it, I want to let you guys know that the weaknesses I'll be discussing will be opinion based on the games I've watched and experiences I've had on my own. So I ask that none of you guys take it personal. I'm not going to go into depth about each weakness because we have 20 teams to cover. With that said, let's get into it. Starting with the East, the Miami Heat's biggest weakness is their lack of consistent shooting and reliable offense next to Jimmy Butler. I would include depth, but rotations decrease in the playoffs because you need elite consistent play from most of your starters all game. The Miami Heat clearly lack offensive options next to Jimmy Butler that can win a game for them, and it's been shown many times how hard Jimmy has to carry this team offensively in order to win. Next team is the Atlanta Hawks. They are very bad defensively and depend solely on the play of Trae Young to run their offense. Keeping the ball from Trae makes their offense terrible, and keeping it from DeJounte Murray makes their offense disappear in general. The Toronto Raptors are an inconsistent team offensively that don't shoot the ball that great and are full of mostly players that prefer scoring in the paint and mid-range area. Also, this team wins or loses depending on how Pascal Siakam plays. The Chicago Bulls would normally have been their lack of defense, but they fixed that up recently, so I'll say that Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan underperforming in the playoffs is their weakness, especially DeMar, who tends to disappear often. The Brooklyn Nets' weakness is whether their new squad has had enough time to consistently perform in the playoffs, and if Mikal Bridges can be this good in the playoffs when it matters most. They also clearly lack in star power, missing that one or two capable all-stars, but I wouldn't sleep on them if they pull an upset. The New York Knicks' biggest weakness is Julius Randle potentially having another underwhelming playoff series, and RJ Barrett's inconsistencies as an efficient scorer and shooter. The Cleveland Cavaliers depend a ton on how well Donovan Mitchell performs offensively and lack playoff experience with their very young team. They're also missing that elite wing that can give you great offensive production too. The Philadelphia 76ers live or die by the James Harden, Joel Embiid pick and roll that opens up their offense tremendously. Any team that can limit their two-man play will beat them. The Boston Celtics' weakness is sometimes past tendencies to start relying on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to play isolation basketball, which makes their offense stagnant. They don't really have much of a weakness aside from this. They play team ball most of the time and their chemistry on both sides of the ball is on point. For the last team in the East, the Milwaukee Bucks' only weakness is relying on Giannis so much that other teams can focus more defensive attention on him, in which the situation would be for Chris Middleton to return to consistent play and become that offensive juggernaut aside Giannis that he's been in the past. Jrue Holiday is obviously great, but clearly him and Giannis weren't nearly enough to take down the Celtics last year, and they were in need of Chris Middleton. For the Western Conference, the Oklahoma City Thunder clear weakness is their lack in playoff experience as an incredibly young team with many recent draft picks. The Pelicans lack in ball movement and depend on a lot of isolation play from Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum to make things happen. The Minnesota Timberwolves don't have much offense outside of Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, lacking in shot creators. Mike Conley is still very solid though, I'll admit. The Los Angeles Lakers' weakness is the inconsistent health of LeBron and Anthony Davis. The rotations that their coach sometimes messes up are also a problem. They have such a great selection of role players that Coach Ham has a tendency of sometimes subbing the wrong guy in for someone who is clearly hot and playing better. The Golden State Warriors' only weakness is the fall off of their defense this year and lack of communication on that end. They're not as in sync on that end this year, and it's shown all season. The LA Clippers' weakness is their consistent lack of driving into the paint and instead settling for many jump shots. To be fair, they are one of the best shooting teams with many guys that can shoot the three, but they could be more aggressive in the paint. The Phoenix Suns are depending solely on the health of Kevin Durant as they traded their valuable depth for him and need to make sure he stays healthy to perform well. The Sacramento Kings lack playoff experience with many guys who will be playing in the playoffs for the first time. Aside from experience, they have everything a contender could use except that two-way all-star wing that elite teams have. The Memphis Grizzlies' weakness is their youth, ego, and overconfidence as a team that makes them lose games due to dumb decisions at times. For the final team in the West, the Denver Nuggets defense, which starts with Nikola Jokic being exploitable on that end, is their biggest weakness. They are amazingly offensively, but it's been proven that their defense is mediocre. Well, I hope you all enjoyed. Those are all my reasons and weaknesses for each NBA team. Let me know what weaknesses you think these NBA teams have in the comments, and if you agreed with me. For more content like this, please make sure to like and subscribe to stay on the radar for all things basketball.